Cheer, cheer the red and the white, honor the name by day and by night. Lift that noble banner high, shake down the...
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Swans Bigfooty podcast. I am your host Bonds. Joining me tonight is Swans Rule 100, SM, Von and our special guest Punts. We are coming off a very disappointing 54-point loss against Hawthorn. Now, we're going to start off with a brief interview of our poster of the week, Punts. SM, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, gladly. So, Punts, welcome to the show. I hope it's not too top-heavy for you. But I guess the first question I wanted to ask you is, you come in for a lot of criticism on the board, but how do you find being that more controversial figure on the board? Do you enjoy it, or is it just something that comes naturally?
It just comes naturally. Everybody's got a passion for the game. Everybody watches the games every week, and everyone has different views. So I have a different view to you guys, and some people agree, some people don't. So that's just the way I see it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So you know what I mean. That's the way it is. So I'm happy to have my little bit. If people don't agree with me, that's just the way it goes. What do you do? It's life.
I've got a question for you, Punts. How did you start supporting the Swans?
The old man, South Melbourne supporter. His father was a South Melbourne supporter. I'm from Melbourne, obviously, and yeah, just carried on from there. So I'm only, 26 years old. So I'm only a Swan supporter, but the old man have always been a South Melbourne supporter. So that's how I started.
So in your 26 years of following the Swans, have you ever thought that we'd go in and win a game? Or have you just written us off for every single game?
I don't know. 5 years ago, I was a bit down, but nah. I've always thought we can go in and win games. I'm one of them negative person that if we don't win, well, I look good. But if we do win, I look bad. So that's just me. But yeah.
Who's your favourite player in all the time you've watched Sydney play?
My favourite player, it'd be Ryan O'Keefe.
Why is that?
He's just in and under. And when he invented the high half forward flank, years ago when he was at his prime, 2005, he was the first one to, invent the high half forward flank. He used to run down into the back line, help everyone out, run back, and I think he started the whole with everyone pushing up the ground. Not a traditional stay back. He just his work rate was unbelievable. It still is now, but he's not as quick as he was. But his work rate was second to none. In them years of the grand finals.
I guess a pretty big question here. How do you see our chances going for the rest of the year? And if not so well, what would you do to change the team up?
I don't think we'll get past. I think we'll get past Carlton, but I don't think we'll get past Fremantle. Not with Fremantle having a week off, just before the St Kilda game. They've gone down to Geelong. It was a bit battered and bruised, but now they've got another week off. Ross Lyons, just too good to. He knows how to tell them to switch on when they have to switch on, and we're running out of legs. I think Hanbury's cooked. I think his shoulders. Every time he gets tackled, he goes to ground, grabs his shoulders. I think he's our outside run. When he's playing well, Sydney are playing well. That's just the way it goes. I think same with Josh Kennedy, Kieran Jack, and Josh Kennedy have had to carry the loads for weeks and weeks now. I think a lot of them are more injuries are. Not being told than they probably are. There's a heap of injuries. I think that's my personal view anyway. That I think there's a lot more injuries than they're telling. A lot of boys are sore, I think.
And looking at the big footy board and your interaction with people, who's pissed you off the most out of SM and myself?
Or Bedford.
I've had an argument with Bedford. But that was enclosed. So he probably hasn't had much nice to say about me, but we had a little tiff. He said that I posted too much, which is fine. That's his view, you know what I mean? But that's the way he is. SR, we had a little bit of, going at the start. And, we're best mates now, so that's the way it is.
Okay, Punts, I've got a question for you.
Yep.
Now, besides the 2 grand finals, what would be your personal highlight from the Swans? I want to get something positive going.
Besides the
2 grand finals, what are your highlights from the Swans?
Oh, highlights.
I love how hard this is.
That's the worst. It's the worst one. Poof. You're putting me in a position here. Highlights.
Are there too many to choose from, or you can't think of one? Or?
I don't even think of one. I
How
can't even think
dare
of one.
you ask a Sydney supporter what a highlight is? Like,
There's too
I
many.
Those are pretty tough times.
I just wanted to get something.
I think every game Paul Kelly played was a highlight. I think he was he was unbelievable. Paul Kelly was. I think Tony Lockett, the point after the siren against Essendon, 96. That was a highlight. I don't know. There's heaps of them. You could sit there and talk about them all day, I guess.
Fair enough. I just wanted to get some rose-coloured glasses on from you. Something positive coming out of your mouth.
There won't be much positive coming out of Friday night's game, I can tell you that.
Speaking of which, we may as well get into a review of the match. Now, I'm going to start off first this week. And I am bloody disgusted by the effort we showed in the second half on Friday. How a team can win the clearances, the centre clearances, the stoppages, the contested possessions, and the tackles, yet lose the inside 50s, and the match is beyond me. Also, when we're trying to clear it from inside 50, zone up and get free. Don't follow your man around or just clear it out in space and hit a Hawks fan in the player in the middle of the ground. And whoever was bloody marking Hodge, disgraceful. I don't know if it was Bird or Parker because they were both following him around at different times during the match. But we're running off him. You can't run off Hodge. He dictated us whenever they were entering forward 50. It just drove me and Grimlock insane. One of you guys can take it away. Go ahead.
Well, they
I
forgot
think
to.
we're all good stuff for that.
Yeah, I'm taking it back. They forgot to put Rowan on Hodge. I think that's where they messed up, clearly. I've gone a bit Sydney-like for my... Normally I prepare notes, but as soon as the side didn't seem to prepare for the Hawks game, I didn't bother this week. That was the most embarrassing half of football I've seen Sydney play for a long time. There wasn't much structure out there. They seemed to have numbers everywhere. They would kick it, and we'd have numbers behind the ball, and they were in space all the time. We allow easy, uncontested possession right near the 50 too. Then people can kick from 50 from goal, so why are we allowing that? What else stood out? There was a few people, if I want to be positive, I'd give Jack a pass mark, Kennedy, but we need to free the poor guy up and block for him. He's just, all these possessions are contested and handballs, and it's a waste. Pike was okay, and I thought you couldn't ask for much more from Mitchell from a first final, like 16 possessions, and he could have had a couple of goals. That's a pass mark for a young kid. But in the gun, I mean, Jude Bolton, what the hell was that performance? You're an icon of the club, but that was rubbish. McGlynn didn't laid one tackle, and he must have had about 40 clangers. He was rubbish. Mumford was woeful after last week's effort. He was pathetic. Rowan, I like, but he's not getting the ball and not having an impact on the game. Even Smith looked lost without Rioli there. He must have been marking him still because he didn't do much else. Everett was nothing on the ground. He was just running outside having a little party or something. And the other two I'm going to go for that other people won't. McVeigh, how many bloody cheap half-back kicks are you going to get? Go in the middle and be the bloody captain. That was McVeigh, Malcheski, Everett, even Rampy. Everyone wants to be an outside half-back flanker. Whereas, he used to have Matt there with his dogged defence. Where's that? That's what we need from McVeigh. We need him in the middle, showing leadership. Every time someone stuffs up, he turns around and gives him a blast, but someone should give him a bloody blast. And the other one I thought, who everyone keeps saying how good he was, I thought he was lucky because Roughhead kept missing. Ted Richards wasn't that good. I thought he got led to the ball a bit, and I was disappointed in his game, but I think he seems to be above criticism when people analyse the Swans and other people attack a certain other defender, who I won't even name because we're not allowed apparently, but seriously, Ted wasn't that good. Hanbury ran hard, but he wasn't fit.
Ted had a shocker.
But
that one kick there was one kick that just stuck in my mind where it's a direct turnover, just kicked it basically straight to the opposition. Yeah,
and Roughhead missed a lot of marks he should have taken, and he missed a lot of shots. He could have had 6+ goals. But Ted gets an 8 out of 10 in AFL.com, and everyone's always on about Brave Teddy. Well, he was bloody piss weak, I thought. Piss weak Teddy. Hanbury tried hard, as much silly as it sounds, but he was on like Smith, who seems to be the most elite runner in the Hawks team, and he was cooked at half time. He was meant to be half fit. Why was he running with him? Some of the matchups made no sense, and it's just pissing me right off. Imagine if I had notes how long I'd go for. Someone else can take over, sorry.
Swans rule, one thing I will agree with you about, Jared McVeigh's performance on the weekend was the worst performance and I'm probably one of his biggest fans, if not his biggest, but I reckon that was his worst performance in 5 years for the club.
I'm just sick of him turning around barking at people when like, he's doing it all. I mean, it might be part of the culture, but it doesn't look good to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll jump in there and try and be a little bit positive. And, I mean, as you've already touched on, we can't say anything negative about a certain player, but I'm actually going to say that Heath Grundy had a great game on Friday night. He really led in defence where, as you're saying, Ted Richards was actually quite woeful. He had 8 1-percenters, which was, a team-leading effort, which was pretty amazing, and he was on the ground for 100% of the game.
I think that's... sorry to interrupt. Do you think that's Grundy's ideal spot in a team would be to play as the second or third defender?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I think we touched on it last week. I thought it was the right idea to have Ted as the man on Roughhead taking that more dangerous forward, and Grundy as that second up option to fall back in front or to man up where necessary. But I don't like Grundy one-on-one with someone like a Roughhead because I think he gets out-muscled too easily, and he's much better as that option to kind of fill the hole in front, I guess. So I actually thought he had a pretty good game, which might surprise some. But as you also touched on, I think Jack had a pretty good game with 11 tackles. It was really, in the absence of another captain, actually kind of led from the front for once, which is pretty good to see. And the third player that I'll actually touch on, who you've already mentioned as well, was Tom Mitchell. I thought he was an outstanding game as a first final for him. And also one other player was Jesse White, which we haven't touched on yet. I thought he was really impressive as a forward. He outperformed Tippett in pretty much every stat except for goals. But he had more touches, he had more marks. He did a lot more with the ball, I thought, which was pretty impressive to see.
One thing, actually, touching on Kieran Jack's game, 15 contested possessions, 11 inside 50s, I believe it was. 5 rebound 50s. It was one of his best games all year.
Yeah. Well, he showed a bit of leadership, unlike half the team. The other thing, I think, Malcheski kicked that beautiful match-winning goal in the grand final last year, over the shoulder, bombed it high. And now I think the Swans players loved it so much they've decided that every kick around the ground has to be a around-the-shoulder bomb into the air up to the moon or something. Learn to kick. For God's sake. Do they even train during the week with their kicking? It's pathetic.
I'm going to, my feeling towards the game, I know we have a lot of negativity right now, and I do get exactly where they're coming from. I was extremely disappointed with our physical effort in the second half because we just didn't seem to be running. And I know you guys have grilled Teddy Richards, and I do agree that it wasn't his best game by far, but a lot of the accountability has to fall on that back line as a whole. There were lots of times where he was just one-on-one, and I mean, Roughhead isn't, he isn't some spud. I expect support, where was our loose man in defence? What was he doing? If he wasn't cutting off the passages where Roughhead was running into, then what was he doing? And not to mention, another thing that really frustrated me when the second half started was we didn't seem to pressure them when they were just one kick outside of their 50. We just seemed to kind of watch, and then they would always spot up players that aren't very good defensively. For example, I think they took advantage of McVeigh and they took advantage of Tippett, and I was just a bit frustrated that, our midfielders, our forwards, we didn't run back and actually, kind of fill in those spaces. But I will say, even though the effort was really disappointing, I can't actually fault them too much because I feel like in the first half we really gave it everything we had, and it's not really anyone's fault that we didn't get any reward for it. I think that's just kind of there's a point where you have to say the other club was just a little bit too classy for us. So, yeah, that's just how I view it.
I do get what you're saying, but there was a feeling that watching it, Hawthorn kicked those 3 early goals in the second half, and we can talk about they have more class and more polish, and they're the better team, clearly, but I felt like for the first time as a Swans fan, I was watching a side that gave up after half-time and got too hard.
Yeah, definitely.
Why was Tippett thrown back in defence? Because that was the signal that we'd given up when Tippett went back in defence.
And why are we willing to concede that short kick all the time near the 50? We don't man up.
Yeah, that's what really frustrated me. We haven't, we've put on so much pressure on the ball carrier all year, and when the game actually really matters, we just had no effort whatsoever. It was just extremely disappointing. But yeah, first half was great.
Yeah, I mean, at quarter time we were almost planning our road trip down to Melbourne for the grand final.
You were
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I completely agree with that point. I think we're kind of overlooking just how good we were in the first half because of just how bad we were in the second half. But there's a lot to take out of the game as a positive, I think.
Punts. We're all awaiting your views.
The first half was a contested possession game. It was low scoring. As soon as Hawthorn got it on their terms, look what happened. They hit you. They're just class. Hawthorn are by foot, by everything. As soon as they got on their terms, they wouldn't have been worried at halftime. I don't think Hawthorn, because they knew as soon as they got that game on their terms that they could hurt us, and they did, and they hurt us even. To be 54 points in a final, first versus fourth, is pretty disgusting. So I think they put Tippett back. It made it look even worse, to be honest with you. If I was another supporter watching that game, I would have just gone that this is disgusting. First versus fourth game. John Momar got out coached. He let Hodge run around in the back line by himself. Why not man him up, make him a cannibal? I don't understand. That's got me absolutely stuffed. Why didn't put anyone on him? He could have put anybody on him. Even say you could have put Rowan on. You could have put Jude Bolton on him just to make him a cannibal. Don't let him just run around in the back half by himself and come over the top. And also Hodge is their main goal off half back. Him and Birchall just set up everything. So why give the bloke that can hurt you the most off the half back the ball and let him run around unaccountable? That's got me stuffed why Longmire did that. I don't have a clue why I did that. I think the forward line didn't work once again. I think Tippett and Pike, they're just running each other's way and everyone says the midfield are bombing it in long. Well, Tippett, I'm telling you right now, hasn't learned how to become a full forward yet. He hasn't learned how to lead. He, unless you've got a genuine full forward that knows how to lead, that game plan will not change, because they're always going to go high up to Pike and Tippett, because nobody's making, saying, get out of my area, I'm going to lead here, and he hasn't worked out how to properly lead yet. Double back. There's a perfect example with against the Geelong game. Hanbury had it on the wing, running down the wing on his left foot. Tippett was running back to the goal square. Hanbury kicked it, and Tippett kept running back to the goal square when Tippett should have, double backed and went forward, and it went straight to Harry Taylor. Like, you can't. He's got to learn how to become a full forward, like your Harry. I mean, like your Tex Walker and all them sort of players. Your Hawkins. They know how to lead and give themselves that whole 50 to say, listen, even Jack Rewald, he gives himself the whole 50, leads up at the ball, and you're not going to get around a guy at 105 kilos, 200, doesn't matter how good a defender you are, you're not going to get around a guy that big on the lead. Doesn't matter. He did it well against, your Western Bulldogs. He led up and he got his 6 goals. Against St Kilda, he did it okay, but if you're going to stand there and hold your hand in the air, you're going to get the high ball every time to the fifth, and it's either going to come to ground if you've got Pike sitting in the forward pocket. They're either going to spoil each other. They're both going to go to the ground. The Crummers are going to pick it up and they're going to kick it straight out. Otherwise, it's going to go over the points, and the other team's going to get possession of the ball again. It's not working. He has to learn how to become a true full forward, because otherwise the game plan will not change next year, and it'll just keep going high every time, because he hasn't learned. He probably hasn't been there long enough to learn the patterns. But even Barry Hall said 10 weeks ago he has to learn how to know your midfielders and everyone's patterns, where they kick, where he has to lead into. Just move everyone out of that 50. No one's going to get around him if he's leading up the ground. It's a crap game style. And if you've got Pike and that running each other's way, to me it doesn't work. You only have to look at you have a look at last year. We won the premiership without a genuine full forward. I understand that. We got a lot of you have a look at the Adelaide game last year when Goods kicked 6. That's how you play full forward. He led up with the ball. No one was in his way. He just knows that's how you play a genuine full forward role. And Tippett's a ruckman to start with. He's they're trying to make him into a full forward. He wasn't a full forward at Adelaide, and he's got a lot of learning to do until next year if they're going to make him a true genuine full forward. And I don't think the four big men work. That's just my opinion. I think they get in each other's way. I think Jesse White, you're missing that link in between centre half back and centre half forward. That link's gone. Reid and Jesse are totally different players. Reid pushes up the ground a hell of a lot more than Reid does. Yeah, push up a lot of the ground a lot more than White does, and Reid's very versatile. He's 196 centimetres, but he's so good at ground level. He's got to take a good defender with him because he can mark in the air. But not many defenders can go with him at a ground ball. You know what I mean? It's just that's what we're missing, that link in between. We might as well not have a centre half forward at the moment because we don't hit up that anyway. So it's just this bombing it'll never change unless we look at the Adelaide game. Jesse White was a genuine full forward that day, and I think he kicked 4, and he was leading up. That was the best game our forward line probably functioned for the whole year, and we didn't have Tippett in the side. We had White in the side. White can play the full forward, and he knows how to lead. Tippett hasn't learnt that, and he want to learn that because otherwise that high ball is going to go every time because that's all the mids can kick it to. If you're not going to present yourself and lead up, well, the high ball is going to come in every time.
Okay, guys.
So then, who do you reckon we drop out of our tours then? Like you're saying, it's not working at the moment.
Well, it's hard because from internal, I don't know. This is just what I think. It's hard at the moment because Pike's in such good form.
Exactly.
If you drop him, well, you're dropping him. Man, he's in such good form. You drop Mumford, and he's almost going to say, okay, 29-year-old Pike, Canadian's going to get a game before me, and Tippett's getting a game before me. I'm out of here. So I don't know if the club's made up their decision on if they're willing to get rid of Mumford yet. I don't know that. But if they drop him this week or dropped him last week, he's almost going to say, stuff this, I'm out of here. And I don't know if they've come to terms with,
Do you reckon that's the sort of person we want, though? If that's really going to be his... I'm not saying necessarily whether it is or isn't or whatever it is, but if that was his attitude where he's sitting there saying, I want game time, if you're going to play Pike ahead of me, screw that. Is that sort of selfish attitude what we really want? Because the club's kind of built itself around this team-first attitude. If Mumford's going to kind of try and hold us hostage and force us to play him, then really, is that the sort of player we want?
No, it isn't.
I'm just going to say, I don't think that, it's one thing to be selfish. It's another thing to want to take your opportunity. He can easily get a game somewhere else. And, if we're going to go ahead and call him selfish, then we may as well call players like Kennedy selfish, who left the Hawks to get more game time. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
It's a bit different. It's a bit different to saying, I'm happy to sit there in the reserves if my form warrants it, and saying, you have to play me no matter what. If Kennedy was one of the top-line players at the Hawks and wasn't getting games, and then... as in if there was a lot of clubs going after Kennedy and he was sort of holding the Hawks hostage to play him, then it's the same sort of situation. But they didn't play him. There wasn't that... Do you kind of get what I'm saying, though? That it's
I get what you're saying there. Now, I was just thinking, if we do drop... I don't think it's as devastating as some people on the board or even here think if we trade off Mumford. I'd almost rather keep Jesse White, keep Sam Reid and all these other tools and trade off Mumford.
Who's
It'll
that
be a better
ruckman
balance
in 3
in our
years or
team.
2 years?
Sorry?
Who's that ruckman in 2 years when Pike retires?
Personally, I think Pike could go for another 3 or 4, but Naismith wasn't bad at under 18s.
You're asking Pike to ruck almost 90% of the game, so you're going to shorten his career as well.
We can use Tippett as a second ruckman.
Tippett can second ruck, not a problem in the world. He's done it before. He's done it since he's come into the game. He's been a second ruckman. I know they're trying to make him a genuine full forward, but at the end of the day, if you're going to get another player in, as in a small, speedy forward or whoever, another lead-up target to take out a ruckman that's standing down there doing nothing, you have to look at going that way. You have a look at the Australian squad this year. You've got Goldstein in there, and you've got Will Minster in there. They pretty much ruck by themselves. So that's how
we're on the ladder north.
Yeah, I do understand that, but they've been quoted all Australian ruckmans. They're in the squad, so obviously they're in better form.
I feel like at Sydney we tend to, I'm not going to say overrate, but we really value them. We've paid overs for them. We've yeah, like
What's
we
our
have,
game style? We play a
Yeah,
very
exactly.
stop-and-heavy game style.
So I
Two
feel like
rucks.
just going off precedent that Sydney aren't going to just say goodbye to Mumford that easily, if you know what I mean.
But
Well,
do you
we
mean
traded
do you
off
think then
Jolly.
that we'd need to play him to keep him happy and interested at the club?
But the thing
Yes.
is, we started this on the presumption that Mumford's gone in there and demanded you play this week, for instance, or
No,
he'll leave.
we're not.
We don't
We're-
know that.
Oh, we don't know exactly right. But if you were him and Longmire said to him this week, listen, you're not playing because we've got Pike and Tippett we want to go with. Like, he's not going to be happy with that.
But
really.
Mumford's game is pretty average. He had 3 disposals. I think if Longmire went to him and said, look, mate, your game is pretty shocking. We have to drop one of the tools, and unfortunately, you're the worst performing of the tools based on that first final. Surely he would cop that.
But he's regarded as the number one ruckman at the club. Maybe
Yeah,
not now, but he has
I-
been since we've got him. He's regarded as the number one ruckman. If the number one ruckman gets dropped, I'm telling you right now, he won't be there next year because he won't be staying around.
Has he been dropped in the past, or has he just missed games through injury and suspension?
He's only missed
Injury,
games through
suspension.
injury and
Just
suspension.
spent injuries and suspension, and every time he's come straight in, they obviously value him. He is good. He is like another midfielder. He does get down, and his handballs and that sort of stuff. You might miss that with your Pike and him, but it'd be good if Mumford had Pike's marks, and then
Yeah,
you'd have the complete.
that's the thing
you'd
that is
have
missing.
You'd have the complete ruckman then. But you've got sort of two. Pike's not very good around the packs. I don't think so. With handballs that Mumford sort of does around the sort of packs, I think that's good. But Mumford, when he's off. He's shocking, like he was on Friday night. He might as well have not played. He seriously might as well not played, and they should have played Pike in the whole ruck and whatever. Sting Jesse White in there for a couple of minutes, or even Tippett to put Tippett in the back line.
It was rubbish. It was rubbish.
I think you made some good points on Tippett, though, but that's why I'm reluctant to say next year he's ruck forward, because I think that he's got to learn how to play forward, and part of his problem is he's been a ruck forward, and we've seen with Jesse White, when he's the ruck forward, he doesn't work out. But
what about Petrie from North Melbourne? That works out. I think that works out perfect. Petrie plays.
When did Petrie last play a good game against the top side? But
Yeah,
And the other difference
he
is
good. He is a good player, but Petrie.
the other difference there is Petrie's played football his whole life. Tippett's preferably played mostly basketball until he was 16, 17, where he started really making an effort at AFL.
Yeah, he's just got to learn. He has to learn because it's just going to keep. It's the same thing's going to happen. He's got to demand the ball. He's got to lead up, present himself. You're not going to get around a 105 kilo guy at 100. Whatever, how big he is, 204 centimetres. You're not going to get around him. He's got to start becoming that true full forward. Otherwise, that high ball is going to keep coming in, and this game style is going to keep. And we're not going to get any better next year if it keeps going like that. And if it does go like that, well, why get him? Why pay this $950,000 a year if your game style is not as good as it was when you won the flag in 2012?
I think one of the things with getting Tippett was he'll work well with Reid, and we've had 10 minutes of Tippett and Reid working together, and Goods probably thrown into that when they targeted Tippett mid-year last year by all reports, and I think that was the plan. I think this is really a makeshift plan that they're working this year.
Yeah, definitely.
But to me, the issue is how do we fix it next week? Like, we can talk about next year, but who do we drop one next week, and do we bring Goods in? They're the issues, and we've got to win next week's game. I don't care about next year yet.
Nah, well,
there was an interesting stat I just wanted to throw in there, which I think actually supports Punts' point, which was that we were actually shorter on average than the Hawks. So I don't actually necessarily think it's an issue of height per se. It's an issue of having the right height. And if Mumford's just going to do nothing for the game, I mean, for instance, you bring in someone like Goods or you bring in someone like Reid next year, obviously not next week, but there are taller players that can still function in that role where they're actually a much more effective player. And it obviously works for Hawthorn.
Reid is very good defensively.
Exactly.
I watch a lot of it. It's hard to watch, like when you watch games on TV. It's totally different. Obviously, you guys know when you're there. The things that people do off the ball that you might not see on TV is Reid's things that he does off the ball defensively is a hell of a lot better than, I know everyone's praising White at the moment, but a hell of a lot better than White is off the ball. He's a lot smarter than White, and things he does off the ball is a lot smarter. I don't think you can play, if Goods comes in this week, I don't think you can play Goods, White, and all the other ruckmans. I don't think you can. The ruckmans on the weekend, and including White, all 4 of them had 11 marks in between them.
Yeah.
But 5 of those from White.
Exactly. It's disgusting. To have all them blokes sitting at 200 plus centimetres and you have 11 marks, nah, that's not. You might as well have had Ben McGlynn run around 174 centimetres if you're going to get that out of that many blokes.
Punts, one question. We may as well move on to the next subject here. Do you believe we're still a chance of making the grand final this year?
No.
Okay,
No.
Swans rule?
I was happy that Carlton beat Richmond because I thought we had more chance of beating Carlton, and that sounds silly because they just knocked off Richmond. But the same thing goes, I was confident once we could play Freo in the prelim, even though they just knocked off Geelong. I think my mindset is win next week, and then you're in with a chance at a grand final, and then anything can happen. Logic tells me that we won't win it, but I've still got a little bit of hope. Call it blind one-eyed faith, but I do believe we can. But we've got to get a few things right, and the team changes this week are critical.
Vaughn?
Yep, agree.
Did you say make the grand final or win it?
Make the grand final.
Making the grand final. I know this is like completely crazy, and I don't have a one logical reason to back this up. I just don't rate Fremantle that highly.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I really think that we can beat them at Patterson's. I think we can take it right up to them. But I am very concerned about how fit we still are. So I think it'll really come down to, it'll just come down to how well our boys can run out a game and how hard the Carlton game is going to be physically. Like, if they just do us a favour and, roll over, then I'll give us a pretty good chance of making the grand final. But if it's another really tough game, like that first half against Hawthorn, then no, I don't think we will make it.
Now, Ross Lyon got criticised for resting his players against Fremantle. They ran over Geelong in that last quarter with their run, and we've got to play Carlton this week, and it's going to be Carlton a contested possession team. It's going to be in and under. You know it's going to be. They've got nothing to lose. Either do we. Everyone does have something to lose, but you know what I mean. It's going to be. We're going to fly to Fremantle with underdone goods, with underdone Jeddah, with underdone Rowan. Hanbury looks sore. Jude Bolton is gone. To a fresh Fremantle that have coming off a week at their hometown, I'd be very. If you did win it, I reckon you'd be gone by the halfway through the grand final. You'd be absolutely buggered.
Personally, I think we can make it, possibly even win it, but we'd have to make some pretty drastic changes to our lineup, and I have a feeling I'm going to get blasted here, but I'd start off with dropping Bolton.
I was actually just about to ask would you pick him next week?
I
the
would
issue with
start off
Bolton
with dropping
is
Bolton.
you can't just go off. I know it's wrong and it shouldn't be this way, but you can't really drop someone like Bolton.
The club won't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
The club won't do it, but I
wish
reckon
he would just kind of say that. I wish he would
Presty.
just kind of say that. I think I've been pretty awful lately, and I want to just sit on the boundary and watch the game.
Players do that.
I agree. I agree.
Presty did that with the 2010 grand final.
But he was
I don't
injured.
think it's
He was
we
injured.
could have passed him.
he was injured.
Oh, yeah, but he put his hand up.
But Bolton got
he
injured on
kicked him.
the weekend.
So
Bolton
yeah,
got
I
injured on the weekend.
wouldn't put it past Bolton, even if he said, I'm not feeling right to go. Even if honestly he thinks he could go, but thinks that he'd be a liability to the team.
And what happens if he doesn't put his hand up and says that he's already got a knock to his knee on the weekend? If he, you know what I mean? I know he's,
But you can't
what
run
happens
up a
if it doesn't?
champion. You
But
can't
who-
run up a champion
And
when the
it
chips are
depends who
down.
you're talking about bringing in for him. If
If
you're
it was
saying
Bolton for good,
Personally, I think I'd be bringing into the team. I'd find a place for Goods. I would personally try and find a place for LRT if we can get him fit. If that means dropping one of our tools like Mumford, I wouldn't have anything against it. The other one who I'd like to bring in the team, and this one's a bit different to most people, I want to bring in Cunningham. He's looked very good when he has come on the ground as a sub this year, and he's actually made an impact.
Oh,
I'd
you're
want to
gonna
get
say
Jetta
Armstrong.
starting the match, and I'd like Cunningham
one
as the
wants that.
sub. He offers some pace, he's got a good level head on him and a decent disposal, and He's lively and will bring some energy into the team, which right now we just look flat on our feet.
Can somebody tell me what role Everett plays down back? Because I don't know if he's playing the Rain half back. He's playing Alec Johnson role. Is he playing Marty Matner's role? Is he just playing the role that he doesn't drop in front of anyone because he's scared to get hurt? Because he's really starting. He's starting to get on my nerves. I'm telling you. He doesn't stand in front of the packs. He's not the bootlace off LRT or Alex Johnson, and that's where it's hurt so much this year because the back six stayed together all last year, and premierships are built on defence. You only have to look at the last 5 years premiers, and they're all built on defence. And ours has been hit this hard. You know, Matner was so good because he was underrated because he was so good. He knew when to peel off his man and help out. You know, remember Teddy Richards and Grundy, they both stand at 190, 192 centimetres. They're not the big brute, 196, 197 centimetre kid. They got a lot of help last year by Matner, and that's why they made him look so good because Matner knew when to peel off his man, come across, help. Alex Johnson the same. Alex Johnson stands at 194 centimetres. He knew, and he was that third man. At the moment, they've got Rampy playing sort of Matner's role and the third tall sort of role. He's 189 centimetres. Like, he's been thrown to the wolves that many times this year in his first year, and he's done incredibly well. But next year he'll probably be that Matner sort of role and be able to peel off. But Alex Johnson is, and might sound funny, is just as big as misses as Even Goods, and that is because that third man, that third tall, we've just been exposed this year for height, and Everett stands at 194 centimetres, and I've seen him and I've watched him not stand in front of packs because I've seen him do it in round 7 against Collingwood. Cloak got a mark. Teddy Richards went nuts at him. He could have come back and stood in front of him. He didn't want to stand it. He did it on the wet. He's getting outmarked by Anderson and that. He's 194 centimetres. If you're not, you might as well have bigs in the team that you can get a bit of run off half back and stands at 189 centimetres because Everett doesn't use his height at 194 centimetres anyway. LRT would drop back in front of players and put his body on the line every day of the week. Everett doesn't want to do it. He does not want to do it. He had 11 disposals on the weekend and 1 tackle for a backman and 1 mark, and he stands at 194 centimetres, and he had 1 mark for the whole game.
He needs to put a bit more weight on.
Oh, I think he needs to put on 5 kilos and a half.
He gets pushed around too easily. Yeah, he gets pushed around too easily off the ball, and that's the problem. And that's the problem with too many of our defenders. Even we don't have any backmen who I would comfortably say could go toe to toe with one of the big forwards. Even Richards sometimes is a little bit too understrength.
Yeah, an ideal team would have Richards would slide across to your second forward, Grundy would play on that third resting forward, and you'd have ex-player like whoever the hell you recruited, Ben Reid, some monster backman as your main backman, and then Alex Johnson in there maybe as even a fourth, but developing into that third. But we don't have that. Last year, Matner and Shaw, you felt like they had grunt and mongrel. They tackled hard. Like if the other team scored, they got through Marty Matner because he would put the pressure on. Whereas now everyone wants to be the outside half-back running player. Like Malcheski wants to run and get a handball. McVeigh wants a handball out. And Everett is a nice kick. I think that's his big asset. He is actually quite a nice kick. But you're right, he's not a key defender and he's not really even accountable. Him and Rampy are almost sticky taped together to play as one player. Exactly. One of them's doing the outside bit, and Rampy is being asked to do something he shouldn't even be able to do. And the fact that he does what he does is actually quite commendable. So full ticks to him as a first-year senior player. But yeah, they're undemand. And then when the midfield's not firing at the moment, they're always under pressure, and there's no chop out. That's what disappointed me in the second half. There was no team. There was no helping each other out. There was people running around pointing and everyone blaming someone else, and that was just crap.
And that's the thing. It's the fact that team ethic was kind of lacking in the second half, and it was really starting from the top with McVeigh, and it was just disappointing to see that the team really fell apart.
That's why I don't think.
So I would suggest one thing for next year. And this is controversial maybe, I'm not a fan of the 2 captains, and I think Kieran Jack should just be the captain of this club. Yeah.
I think he's proved it this year that he's more than capable of shouldering that load on his own.
Yeah, and that's not even necessarily a pot at McVeigh. It's just 2 captains to me suggest that one guy isn't doing a good job. I don't know. I'm not a fan of the multiple captains, and it's only us, Melbourne, and the Giants who do it, and I think that says something.
I think if LRT can play in the 2s this week in the grand final and get through, and we get through against Carlton, I think you should go over to Fremantle and play and take it and play him against Fremantle.
Unfortunately, we can't play LRT.
did you see on the weekend Sandilands up forward taking grabs? Like, who the hell's going to play on him in the current team?
Well, that's exactly right. That's why you need that third tall to peel off, like you had last year with Alex Johnson and Rampy. You know, if you take over LRT, he's going to be that third extra tall, and then at Rampy will get the small defender and be able to peel off when he can to help out the defenders, and also Grundy and that everyone will be. At the moment, Grundy and Richards are getting isolated every week because they've got no help from nobody else. If Everett's not going to stand up and be that third tall like Alex Johnson did, they're getting exposed every week because they know that their weaknesses, and they're going to get done one-on-one normally most of the time. That's where last year was so good.
One thing. With LRT and playing in the reserves this week, unfortunately we can't bring back someone like him or even Adam Goods through the reserves. The rules are with reserve grade competition anywhere in Australia, basically for AFL, they have to have played 3 games during the year to play in the finals.
Is there some allowance though if it's
no,
coming back
there
from
isn't.
injury though?
There isn't.
I thought there would be some allowance for coming back from injury.
There isn't.
No, they're just going to have to take the risk with him.
We're gonna have to, if we're gonna play LRT, we're gonna have to take a risk with him.
Well,
We can't play him in an
playing
equal.
The 9th team this week. Let's bloody take a few risks. We should. If we can't beat Carlton, we don't deserve to be there anyway.
Well,
So
am I
feel
the
like-
only one that thinks that if a 70% fit LRT, then Everett's doing stuff all at the moment, getting 11 possessions. Is it going to be any worse that if he's underdone and doesn't and can't prove himself because he's been out for so long? Is it going to be any different than having Everett in the team at the moment?
Personally, I think.
Because that's I was going to say. I think the 2 main losses that we're feeling this year are AJ and LRT because we've basically been hit with the same, like the 2 best players in that one position, which is that third tall who can go down back and really help the defence when they're under siege, and we just have no one at the moment who can do that role. Rampy's trying his best, but that's really not his position, and he's really been exposed in that. Yeah.
Well, the thing is as well, like if with LRT out, you'd almost go Reed next, and he's out, and then you could almost throw Goods down there, and he's out. So we're really been exposed in that position.
Oh, and that's exactly right. This year's injuries haven't just been from your midfielders or your fringe sort of players. They've been key position players like Reed, LRT, Alex Johnson, Goods. They're key position players. Then you throw Jetta in that he pretty much invented the slingshot. It sort of doesn't work without Jetta, the slingshot. You haven't seen it since the Collingwood game. It just doesn't. It's key to everyone. With Reece Shaw also, that's your halfback flanker. That was all his run off halfback flank. McVeigh's good at the halfback flank, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't give you that run. He sets you up, but if you've got nothing forward because everyone's behind the ball, he can't run because he's not fast, McVeigh. So you're missing that run off halfback like you do, like Hawthorn do, with Birchall and that sort of stuff. So you're missing that. Vital part of the game as well. You need run off your halfback, and we're not getting that at the moment that's what obviously Everett's trying to do, but he's not doing it. And that's
the thing with Everett though is he's just as likely to have a good game against a side like Carlton.
And everyone will praise him.
But the thing is that we're not really. Well, as arrogant as it might sound, I would have one eye on the Fremantle game. So are we necessarily looking for a player that's going to stand out in the Carlton game, or are we looking, as has been suggested, maybe bring in an LRT as the sub even, just to give him some sort of game time, get him some feel of the footy back because he can't play reserves, with one eye on the Fremantle game. Play a bit of cheeky buggers like Ross Lyon seems to like, rest a couple of the players like Jude and those kind of guys who are struggling, Hanbury and all of that, and bring some of the underdone guys in to give them a bit of a runaround.
And if we lose?
Oh, well, nothing gained, nothing lost, nothing gained. If we lose to Carlton with the team, if we lose to Carlton with the players that we're hoping to use against Fremantle anyway, then we would have lost to Fremantle anyway. You know what I mean?
At the moment, I don't think we've got any other options.
Exactly.
Throw it to the, just go for it. I don't think we've got any other options anyway. You're not going to see Sam Reid this year. What are other options? I think Drew Bolt needs to put up his hand and say, I'll be the sub. I really do think he has to stand up and say, I'll be the sub. I think he's, if he's injured, he did get injured on the weekend. If he goes in that game knowing himself that he's injured, I don't think that's right. But
well, do you reckon Jude would be a good sub, or just give him the week off?
Well, are they going to give him the week off, knowing that it might be his last game?
Yeah, that's the other issue. I haven't really thought of that. Yeah, good point.
But you told me 2 weeks ago that we had that Biggs come in the side. Did he give us more run off the half-back than Everett did that night?
Personally, I think Biggs' performance was
like
brilliant. I didn't want to drop him.
Exactly
I feel
right.
like
So why not?
one thing it's one thing to go into a final with, aiming for speed, aiming for, all of those things that, our reserves players that you want to, bring in would give us. And I understand why you want to take that gamble, but at some stage you do have to say that it is a final.
Yeah.
And players like Biggs, they've played one senior AFL game, and they're just, I think it's just too big a risk. Like Jeddah, we brought in Jeddah, and I thought he was pretty average. And if
Really?
that's if that's a player that won, if that's a premiership player, I do not even want to imagine what will happen to Biggs if he plays against Carlton or Fremantle, because they will destroy him.
I
Question.
understand that, but is Everett in a different state at the moment? Everett didn't stand up in the first final last week.
I don't actually rate Everett as poorly as you guys do. I think he's serviceable. I would say that I would have him ahead of our other reserves options. So I would play Everett before I would play Biggs. It's just, I think, too big a gamble, especially if you want to bring in Goods and you want to bring in LRT. I just think it's just too big a gamble.
I'd bring in LRT for Everett. So Everett would be straight. So that'd be that sort of swap. But
Look,
who are they
unfortunately, we
drop
could
for
talk
Goods?
about LRT as much as possible. He hasn't played since round 6, and I don't think the coaching
But
staff will
is
bring him
LRT
in.
that close to a return? I think Bonds, you had some sort of idea on it. Is LRT
He
close enough to
he
return?
didn't get through the reserves training 2 weekends ago
Well, that's not
when we
very
were
good then.
looking to bring
I
him in.
think
I believe he has
LRT
been
's
running
gone.
and training since then, but
Hasn't he-
I think our
hasn't he
team
trained
would
the last
wear
2
on
weeks?
the side of caution with finals now.
If we're looking at what the Swans will do, there's already a story out about Goods, which means they're floating that crap. So he's on the team sheet. Let's face it. Longmire's not the sort of coach. I mean, we saw how he coached with Hodge and stuff. He's going to put LRT and Goods back in the same week, whether we think he should or not. My opinion is that he would not take that risk. So,
Having to juggle, the fact that we'd have to juggle then
LRT,
Goods, Jetta, Rohan,
Rowan,
Hanbury, Bolton, Smith, and even Ryan O'Keefe looked sore throughout the last
And
few weeks as well.
And did McVeigh get injured late?
Yeah, in the last minute or something.
McVeigh's another one.
What's
That's
the update
too
on
many,
that?
and our tools with Mumford, Pike,
Bone
and White.
bruising McVeigh's got.
How
Apparently,
long?
or Doc Larkin said, I know it's Doc Larkins, but he
Oh.
said if it was round 10, he wouldn't be playing in round 11. That's what he said. He goes, there's no way that he'd be playing the following week if it wasn't a final this week. But even if they bring in Goods, who are they going to drop for Goods? Can they surely they can't go all the full
It has to be
tools.
White.
It has to be White.
Even
Mumford.
as good as White's been playing, you can't say to White, yes, you deserve your spot over Goods. I mean, Goods will always command that position. If he puts his hand up, if he says he's fit, you give it to Goods every day of the week.
And then
I've sort
I
of
say we
jumped on
drop
the White
Mumford.
bandwagon, but
Oh, I agree.
has White been good, or has White just been better than the spud he used to be?
He's been
you could
good.
just
He
say,
actually
has White been
fights.
good, or has everyone else just been that bad? The White looks
Well, for a lot of the night, don't forget, White was actually had Hodge near him. Hodge ran off White. Now, the team should have shifted and manned Hodge up, but White was his actual direct opponent, from what I could see and what they were saying on the TV. Like, we talked about Hodge's damage before, and White tries hard, but I don't know. They're not going to
I actually think White would beat.
drop Tim.
No, and they're not going to probably drop the 2 rucks at this time of year either. So it has to be White. And White will
I think
probably beat. So
Yeah, we're on the 12 game plan. I think the club is, and they've decided to go with. It'll probably work against Carlton too. Like, that's the sad part, but it won't work against Fremantle.
Personally,
Fremantle don't run the 2 ruckmen. Zach Clark's very mobile, but then they have Chris Mayne as their centre half forward, which is maybe you could probably say you're Adam Good sort of player. Do you know what I mean? He runs all day, and it's a different sort of centre half forward than White is. You know what I mean? So, and then they have Pavlich at full forward. You know, you could say for instance that's your Tippett sort of markup sort of play, but they can't go in with Goods, White, the 2 ruckmen, and everyone this weekend. I don't think they can anyway.
In a lot of ways, we've got 4 rucks.
Yeah, well, we do.
Sorry, Mike, you go.
I was just going to say what I really like about White over Mumford. Obviously, Mumford is a lot stronger in the ruck. But what I like about White, which I think that our team has been I find him very hard to match up on from a coach's perspective, because he's very agile and very quick, and there were some plays where he was almost in like the middle, and he was so hard to tackle, and he really tried to take the game on. And I feel like I don't want us to be the kind of club that goes off just a player's name instead of their performance. And I would say that just based off that performance, I don't think White should be dropped. But that's probably not going to happen because of structural reasons. But
Von,
yeah.
I get what you're saying, but did White hurt Hawthorn? Like as I said, Hodge was next to him. They didn't care. White ran through the middle. They didn't care because he took the game on, but he doesn't hurt opposition sides. He's a luxury if the forward line's functioning. But Tippett draws the best defender, which frees White up. And if we're too top heavy, White's the weak link because you need Mumford and Pike to ruck together.
The weak link is Mumford.
Isn't a forward's arsehole, whereas Pike can go forward. So it's either Mumford or White for me, and it's a hard call. But
The weak link
Pike and
at the
Tippett are
moment
untouchable.
is Mumford. He got 3 disposals on the weekend and was subbed out. White at least tries
What
hard.
did we say about him
He's
last
coming
week?
off 16
Exactly.
disposals.
The month leading up to this game, he was actually one of our best players. So I think it's a bit short-sighted to say he's the first one out the door when he's got the runs on the board.
Like I understand how a lot of people talk about the partnership and all that sort of stuff, but as I say again, you look at the All-Australian 2 rucks at the moment; they don't have a partnership. That's just I don't agree with that partnership crap. I reckon
Do you really think though that Pike is a good enough ruckman to ruck on his own? Because I don't have the confidence that he can do it.
Yes.
No.
Easy.
Pike's almost a better forward than he is a ruckman.
Yeah, exactly. I heard a stat that he was actually the most accurate kick in the competition for goal for any player with over 10 goals. And that's ahead of guys like Jack Gunston, which is just crazy.
As I said before, I'd love to have Pike's hands. He'd be the ultimate ruck.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with the clearances, we get beaten in the clearances more when Pike is in the middle. And I haven't got the stats to back that up.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
Geelong get beaten on the clearances every week, and they finish second on the ladder. We won the clearances on the weekend, still got beaten by 54 points. Is it an issue?
I'm just mindful of saying Mumford was shit on the weekend. I don't deny that, but we're not experts. But if we looked at last week's podcast, we were all singing Mumford's praises. He was back to his great form. He was an extra midfielder for the last month. It's like whoopie-doo Mumford, but it's one bad game.
I'm just saying we shouldn't drop White. We shouldn't drop White.
But if we drop White this week, I reckon he's off.
Yeah. Well, it's
either going to be Mumford leaving or White leaving. So
we'd rather have White leaving, to be honest.
Well, if the club's made up their mind,
because Reid takes his spot.
Yeah. 5 months ago, none of us would have cared if White had been off.
Nah.
Well, let's put it simply. Give us your changes for Carlton. Punts. Who's in and who's out?
Well, I'd have if Jude Bolton is sore, he has to not play. And if he does play, he has to put up his hand and say, "I'll be the sub." I think Jetta should start. I think he has to start if he's going to be doing anything for us in the finals, because there's no point of having him as the sub. I think Gary Rowan has to stay the whole game. I think his defensive pressure. Bolton doesn't have enough. He's not quick enough to even get to the contest. At least Gary still gets to the contest and provides that defensive pressure. And Gary and Jetta only have to do a few things a quarter to be able to change a game. A run-down tackle, a goal, something, get it over the back, whatever and Gary brings a lot of defensive pressure, which we've been lacking. And Mitchell, when he plays forward, doesn't provide that because he's not quick. Mitchell, Bolton isn't quick whatsoever, and if you haven't got McGlynn down there, it just comes out so quick. At least with Gary, and Gary Jaw's a good defender as well, because Gary he's 6'3.5". He's 109. I think he's a centimetre shorter than Good, so Jaw's a good defender also. And when the ball comes to ground, he can run down a taller defender. I think he has to stay in, and I think Goods, if they're going to bring Goods in too, I think he has to play as well. I don't think they can make Goods the sub. I think it has to be. Maybe Jude Bolton has to play, and they have to taking the risk with Jetta and Goods as playing the whole game out. I can't see them.
Personally, I think
White's gone. White has to go. They can't play him all the same.
So White out.
Goods in, White out.
Yeah, Goods in, White out, and Bolton has to be, and that's probably the only change. And Bolton the sub.
Personally, I think they're going to drop Rowan.
I felt if they're going to make that call, it'll be Everett for me, because Everett doesn't give you anything as it is, so I don't think it's going to be a big issue. So, you know what I mean? I don't know. I know he's been training the last 2 weeks with the main group, so Have they made up? They obviously haven't made up their mind. They might have. Obviously, I'm not internal, but have they made up their mind on him yet? I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they're waiting if something happens to Grundy or something like that. I don't know. But if you're going to get 11 possessions out of Everett and he's not going to jump in front of the packs and put his body on the line and take one tackle and one mark out of your first game, how much worse is LRT going to be? Even though he's been out since round 4. Really, LRT's a brunt of a man. He's not a midfield. He doesn't run all day. He sits in the back line. He puts his body on the line. He hasn't lost how to mark. He's not an idiot. You know what I mean? He knows how to mark. He knows how to read the play. He's 29 years old. He's been doing it for that long now. He's not. He'll read the play better than you don't. You don't lose how to read the play. So he knows how to read the play. So I think he should come in for Everett if he's fit. Maybe not this week. Maybe if they get, maybe the following week. But if it's this week, it has to be White. Unless they go with Mumford. If they drop Mumford will probably walk out on Monday morning. So it's just a matter of what they're going to do. They probably want to go with the 2 rucks. Being you're going up against Warnock and Cruiser this week. So I think it'll have to be White.
Okay, Bonds.
Personally, I think we're going to drop Rowan. I know that'll displease Punts and a few other people on the board. And whilst he's got great pressure, he isn't really offering more to the team, and they're going to take a risk. They'll start Jeddah and use him in Rowan's role, I think, and use Goods as a sub. Swans rule, who do you think will go in and out?
Well, I've said before on the board, I think Rowan should be sub because I think he's playing almost an impact role anyway. So just tell him he's got to do it for a quarter because he's not getting the ball enough. But I think as a sub, he can impact the game. I thought Jeddah ran quite well, even though it went unrewarded, and I think he's ready to go close enough to start the game. So that's my first move. If LRT's fit, I'm playing him and I'm dropping Everett. And if Goods is fit, I'm bringing Goods in and I'm dropping White because I think that eliminates the top heaviness because I think Mumford and Pike as ruckmen are too good, but I'd have Mumford on notice of some description. And I'd also be tempted, if I was really harsh, to drop Bolton for a Lamb, who I think could give us more. And if I wanted to make another change, which I know won't happen, I would actually drop McGlynn and put Morton in because I think he'll offer a bit more than McGlynn offered the other day.
Von?
I actually like SR's changes. Another thing we haven't taken into consideration is who comes in for McVeigh.
If he misses.
Well, yeah. So that's going to be really interesting to see how he pulls up. I'm going to just echo what you guys have said with the changes. The only thing that I would say differently is I really hope that someone can kind of nudge Jude Bolton and just ask him to, kind of put his hand up and back out. As for who starts as sub, I think all of the players who are coming back from injury should start on the ground. Just because it's Carlton, we aren't a very big chance of losing to them. We really need to get run into them. We cannot afford to have LRT or Goods only getting 20 minutes of football against and then come up against Fremantle. So I would have maybe Rowan as the sub, just because he's got the run in the legs, and I'd just have all the injured players on the park because, yeah, like I said, it's Carlton. I think we should account for them pretty easily.
SM?
Yeah, well, I mean, I echo exactly what Von says as per usual, and SR100, and say that I reckon if they're fit, we bring LRT and Goods in for White and Everett. And look, I mean, it is Carlton. We do need to pay them respect because it could be a tough game, but they played their grand final today. They were out on their feet against Richmond, and they played a great game. But if we're going to be any hope of beating Freo, we need to get the game time into LRT and Goods. If they're fit, they'll play. They'll be good. If they re-injure themselves, well, it saves us them injuring themselves against Freo and costing us the spot in the grand final. And I agree. I'd have Rowan as the sub because he just didn't get enough of the ball to justify starting again.
But did Bolton?
Well, no. And I was going to say the other change I would make. It's what SO100 said. I'd probably drop Bolton for Morton and be brutal. But it's one retiring player for another. And I'd play Morton over Bolton. And look, if the unthinkable happens and we lose to Carlton and Bolton played his last game against Hawthorn, well, so be it. But there's we need to give him every chance of playing against Freo and playing well in his potentially last game. Not
to mention Mitch Morden is Mr. September, so you could
exactly. You could have penciled him in for about 3 or 4 goals against Carlton.
Okay.
If if you bring in Morton and that what you're saying is, and for McGlynn, and you play Rowan